This is The Guardian.
Regid Ahmed here on Gadigal land. The UK has a new Prime Minister. In this episode of The Guardian's global news podcast, Today in Focus, we take a look at Andy Burnham's new life at number 10 Downing Street. Here's host Helen Pidd.
Well, he finally made it.
I have just come from Buckingham Palace, where I have accepted His Majesty the King's invitation to form a government.
On his third and most audacious attempt, Andy Burnham is Prime Minister. He's given his first speech in the job.
But I can do something to give people some breathing space now, some help with the...
He's chosen his cabinet.
John Healey is Chancellor of the Exchequer, and I can tell you that was not expected.
And now, things get real.
He'll go behind that black door and he will wander into the cabinet room and he'll see all those kind of sights that we've seen if we've, watched Love Actually. He'll do all of that, but one of the very first things that he'll do is he'll get a briefing from the National Security Advisor, and then this is a real kind of sober moment.
This is Paul Harrison, who worked in number 10 for Theresa May.
Almost certainly completely by himself, he'll sit in his office and he'll be given a set of letters and a shredder. And the letters are about whether we should respond in the event of a nuclear attack or we shouldn't. And they're duplicates, and there are 4 of each because we have 4 nuclear submarines that operate in the nuclear deterrent. This is basically a process that every new Prime Minister does by themselves. So he'll shred the ones he doesn't want and seal the others in envelopes.
So they're already written for him, are they? And he just has to sign them?
Yeah, that's a huge decision that you've made a few hours after you've gone to see the King and he said, OK, please form a government in my name. There'll be a lot of stuff where Andy Burnham will want to pause and look around and think about what he's achieved by getting there. I mean, it's an amazing thing, but also how much kind of hope and responsibility is now invested in him.
From The Guardian, I'm Helen Pidd. Today in Focus, Andy Burnham's in tray. Paul Harrison, you worked for Theresa May as her press secretary after the general election in 2017 while she was Prime Minister. Let's talk about what Burnham has just walked into, because I think a lot of our overseas listeners will be quite surprised to hear that they'll have seen a picture of Downing Street, but maybe they don't realise that it's not a purpose-built government building like the White House or the Chancellery in Germany. It's like a cramped row of little higgledy-piggledy terraced houses, isn't it? Can you remember what you first thought when you knocked on that door and you were let in?
As you say, it is very higgledy-piggledy. In fact, the further down below stairs you go into the basement, the more it looks like a collection of sort of abandoned wedding furniture that's not even from the same wedding. So, yeah, it's very strange. It's a bit of a rabbit warren. Like lots of old buildings, the rooms aren't the same size. There are stairs that sometimes seem to go to nowhere in particular. And in some cases, it's very grand. So there are these amazing rooms upstairs, the state rooms, the ones that people will have seen on television when you see foreign leaders go and introduce themselves. But that is nowhere like the desk space that most of the people occupy. We were 6 to a room in the bit of the Downing Street press office that I worked in. So, yeah, there is a bit of a facade inside that very grand black door.
And what about the living quarters? What are they like for the Prime Minister and his or her family?
Bits of them are quite spacious, actually. There's sort of some kind of double height ceilings and they look a bit grand in portions, but also effectively they're smashed into the middle of the building. So they don't start on the ground floor or finish right at the top. They're kind of a flat that's inserted halfway up, both above number 10 and above number 11. And obviously prime ministers and chancellors, depending on how big their families are, might have chosen to swap those 2 places around. Everybody is given a small, certainly by the standard of other countries, allowance to redecorate and paint, put up wallpaper, whatever. So They may be a bit different now since they were in Theresa's day. There's a strange psychological component of the whole thing, which is that imagine you have a really busy job. You're the chief executive of a big firm, which effectively the PM is. And then we say, well, you can live here for free, but it does mean that you are at our absolute beck and call all the time because you live just above the cabinet room. So you're in this strange situation where you can't ever really escape the duty of the job, which would probably be true if you were living somewhere else, but you also can't really escape the stress. So you come downstairs to the place that you're having the meeting that you're worried about that day because you're chairing cabinet and it's Tuesday, or you're thinking about National Security Council and the things that you'll probably see and be told there, and you live 30 yards away from where all that happens. So that's an experience that not too many other people get.
Yeah, the way you describe it, it sounds quite claustrophobic. And when I think about how Andy Burnham has lived his life in Greater Manchester for the last 9 years, he's been a pretty free agent. You could just see him wandering around. Sometimes he'd have an aide with him. He used to go to gigs with his eldest son. I saw him once at a protest. He was just there kind of as a civilian, actually, with his daughter. He goes for runs, goes to walk his dog. Is that all over for him now?
It's over in large part in terms of how easy he'll find to do that. And also, he just won't ever go anywhere unaccompanied again. So,
does that really, he'll never be alone again, will he?
Almost certainly not. I mean, within Number 10, it's slightly different because obviously there are armed guards and, it is a bit of a fortress in itself. So the PM's protection won't follow him around from room to room in the building. But anytime you step outside, you'll be in a convoy of cars. There'll probably be motorcycle outriders. You'll certainly have close protection people, universally referred to by everyone who works in Number 10 as the cops. They will just be with you all the time. So, I think Theresa said to me once that the day she became Home Secretary, she never drove a car again. And, Andy Burnham will have to get used to that. He can go for a run around St James's Park if he wants to. And I saw a nice video of him jogging with Mo Farah in London. Yeah. But if you'd panned out in that shot, there would have been a couple of guys dressed the same as you, but bigger, running behind. And that will be his life now. Yeah. Forever.
And I mentioned that the Burnhams have got a dog. It's a dog called Axel. How do you think he will get on with Larry the cat, who has outlasted, I think, 7 prime ministers now?
Larry the cat is doing fantastically well. So I don't want to make myself unpopular. I like animals. Larry the cat is not particularly friendly.
Is he not?
So, no, any challenge to Larry's dominance will not be well received. He's a little bit scratchy. He's a little bit bitey. So, yeah, although, I mean, he's an old cat now. He's getting on. So maybe he has mellowed. But in my day, there was a particular chair that he liked to sit in. Also, he's obviously got a sense of theatre because Churchill liked to sit in it as well. And, woe betide the person who tried to move him. Also, you don't want to be the person where, you're in charge and Larry decides that maybe the end is nigh or close. There was a time during Brexit negotiations where everything seemed about as bad as it could possibly seem in Number 10. And also Larry was quite unwell. And, he went to the vet several times. And that was probably 2018 now. So he's doing well.
Yeah, he is. Peter Walker, you're senior political correspondent at The Guardian, a familiar voice to our listeners. Thanks for making time for us.
A pleasure, and welcome to life under Andy Burnham's Britain.
I know, a new dawn. And so Andy Burnham has achieved his goal. He's met the king. He's got the job he's always wanted. He's walked up Downing Street with his wife. He's given his first speech. What did you make of it?
The bits that struck me was, first of all, his immediate acknowledgement that the response of lots of people watching this, lots of voters, are going to be, what, this again? And he acknowledged the fact that this turnover of PMs is not sustainable. And he's, as he put it, the generation of politicians of which he's a part, is to blame. So he said the first thing is, we will do better. There will be a plan.
Later this year, I will bring forward a new plan for Britain, a 10-year plan, laying out a path.
as ever with Andy Burnham, the specific plans were currently slightly vague. But the most striking policy thing was this thing where he said, homelessness will end.
I will soon go through that door behind me and issue my first instruction to end rough sleeping in our country.
And as you know this very well, when he became Greater Manchester Mayor, he said he would do that. The numbers went down, some argue partly because of COVID, and now the numbers have since been creeping up. And his people will say that's because as a mayor, you don't have an impact on the kind of national policy stuff. So housing allowances, asylum seekers being kicked out of where they live. These are the kind of things as a mayor you can't control. So he now has his hands on these enormous policy levers and can do it. So he's obviously decided becoming Prime Minister with only a slightly funny mandate isn't difficult enough on its own. I'm going to add this extra task. But I think it's bold, and I get the feeling the country's maybe ready for a bit of boldness.
Yeah, I was quite surprised when I heard it because it's, as you know, I basically got a PhD in Burnhamology after all those years watching him up close in Greater Manchester when I was Northern editor. And he began so bold in 2017 saying, I'm going to end rough sleeping. And that language evolved over the 9 years he's been there to end the need for rough sleeping. So I thought it was very interesting he's gone so hard on that issue on day one in the job. And I just wonder for how many people that would be a priority, a real pressing issue in their life. What do you think? How do you think that will land with people?
I suspect that if you were to get people to write down a list on a blank piece of paper of what their most important priorities are, I don't think ending homelessness would be on even their first A4 page. But I think it's one of those things which, if you present it as a list, do you think ending homelessness and rough sleeping is a good idea? Then most people would go yes. But I think it goes more than that. I think it's something which is a visible sign of a society that's not quite right. So it's a visible sense of the country perhaps not doing as comprehensively well as it could. And it ties into his other big pledge in a speech, which is this is to be a government which is based on basically kind of people.
It's about putting the right values and the right standards at the heart of government. I will put the care of people at the heart of everything I do. I will give this my all, and I ask you all to pull with me. Let's build a new national sense of unity, of common purpose and positivity. Let us make...
Trying to tap into the humanity of people. Hope was a word that he uses quite a lot. And he knows he probably has a limited amount of time in which to do that. I think it's quite clever. You can understand it very simply. And he's given himself a target by which he's happy to be judged. And I think voters will quite like that.
And at the time we're recording this, Burnham has begun appointing his cabinet. And there was a big surprise, wasn't there, in his pick to be his Chancellor, John Healey. Not exactly a household name, an MP for Wentworth and Conisbrough, which is just north of Rotherham in South Yorkshire. Tell us about him and what do you make of his appointment?
He was the Defence Secretary throughout the Starmer government until literally a matter of weeks ago, where he resigned in a very sudden move that surprised a lot of people. He resigned because he said this long-standing kind of defence investment plan the government had been putting together over many, many months didn't have enough money. And he's quite authoritative. I mean, what is interesting is that up until quite recently, he would have been seen as quite a kind of loyalist to Keir Starmer, in that he was in Starmer's cabinet all the way through. But the fact that he resigned gives him a kind of plausible deniability from a Starmer project. And he would say he was standing on principle. It sometimes offers you this kind of second chance.
And I guess Healey has got some relevant experience, albeit quite a long time ago. He was the Financial Secretary to the Treasury under Tony Blair. Then he was Housing Secretary under Gordon Brown. Do you think that by appointing him Chancellor, Andy Burnham's actually given him something very difficult to do, which is to say, all right, you said that defence needed billions and billions and billions more. Good luck. Here you are. Here's the Treasury. Find the money.
I mean, to an extent, the defence job is very figures-based because you spend a huge amount of your time looking at all these multi-billion pound, multi-year projects and wondering where the hell the money has gone because, defence procurement projects very, very often overrun and spend a lot more than they said. So that's quite good training. I don't think he's brought him as a kind of hostage necessarily. I think he's brought him in just to try and reassure the markets. We always talk about the markets as if it's this kind of amorphous thing. But there is a worry, certainly amongst Team Burnham, that we have this history lesson of what happened under Liz Truss.
Yeah.
You know, if they get spooked, if the herd gets spooked, then they do, and that can be incredibly difficult to get back. Ed Miliband would probably have been Burnham's first choice. It was almost certainly the first choice of lots of people around him. But there was just this thing, it's this reflex problem that lots of people in Labour have, which is they worry about what the Daily Telegraph and Daily Mail front pages are going to be. And those in themselves are not necessarily influential, but they can influence other people.
And Ed Miliband has been moved from the Energy Department to be promoted to the Foreign Secretary. He replaces Yvette Cooper. What do you make of that appointment?
I think it's something which obviously I think Miliband wanted Chancellor, but it's one of the other great offices of state. And it's an interesting one. You get to fly around the world. And it's most importantly one that could be sold to Miliband as a promotion, as Ed, we really need you this. You know, this is a bit of a weakness for me, but you've been around the block, you've led Labour, you know what you're doing. You know, we really need you to do a good job. And foreign policy is not the sideline it once was. And, you know, Miliband is quite affable. You know, he's got quite a lot of charm, so I imagine he'll do it quite well.
And there was a lot of speculation in the last few days that Shabana Mahmood would be the new Chancellor, and instead she's staying put as Home Secretary. And do you think we can see this as Burnham endorsing what people, certainly on the left, would see as her fairly harsh immigration policies, making it much more difficult for immigrants to settle in the UK?
He's endorsing it to an extent. He's certainly endorsing the tone. The interesting bit is going to be whether he endorses the detail, because even during the Makerfield campaign trail, he was, you know, saying to journalists that there were some aspects of the immigration reform, particularly the retrospective changes to indefinite leave to remain, that he wasn't particularly pleased with. So it's always possible that he's made a deal with her whereby she stays in the job, you know, which is another one of the kind of very, very big jobs, on the condition that she looks at scaling back some of that stuff.
So, Paul, just how important are these first few hours, these first few days and weeks in the job in terms of getting your message out there and really setting the tone for what's to come?
They're really important. They're really important. And so that for a few reasons. One, you've just got a lot of people who will be interested because of the novelty about what you're going to do. So people will be falling over themselves to offer you interview space and time, but also people will be paying attention when you make that first speech. That's a big kind of cut-through moment. And those cut-through moments in the modern media, politicians really prize. They're a huge asset. So that's really important because you've got a lot of attention. It's also kind of important because you need to limit your missteps. You're introducing yourself to the country again. Andy Burnham's been a cabinet minister, but quite a long time ago now, and people very reasonably have short political memories. So if you think of him as a politician at all, as you said, you'll think of him as the mayor of Greater Manchester. He's coming onto a new stage now and doing a load of new things that he won't have done before. So limiting your mistakes is also important, partly because you're at the moment where you've got the greatest amount of power that you're probably ever going to have as Prime Minister, but you've also got the least amount of experience. And that's true of everyone around you too. So the 25 or so special advisors that will be part of Andy's team in Number 10.
And what do you make about the way in which Andy Burnham communicates? And, you know, he's been writing all of his own speeches in Greater Manchester. He does like to be able to speak off the cuff a little bit. Are those days gone now that he's Prime Minister, do you think?
They haven't gone. I suppose the extra emphasis that, with all due respect of being mayor of Greater Manchester, which is a very important job, he will just be a lot more time poor now. People will fight over 5 minutes of his diary. There will be arguments about exactly what he does and for how long after Prime Minister questions before he goes back to Number 10. So that will put limits on how much he's able to be the author of everything that goes out in his name. The communication stuff, though, I think lots of people have said is an asset, and I tend to agree with that. He's got a kind of folksy charm. And something that somebody said to me the other day, who is also a veteran of my kind of political era, said, sometimes voters like it when they think that they see someone who's enjoying the job. And you get that sense from
See
him.
also Zohran Mamdani, right?
Yeah, exactly. People who feel like...
Or Trump, actually.
Yeah, I mean, there is no one in modern politics who's enjoying himself as much as Donald Trump, rightly or wrongly. But yeah, so I think, that's something that he'll want to recapture. The burdens of office are very heavy, and I've seen one person struggle with them up close. But I think voters, while they're sympathetic to that, they also want solutions. We hear so much about the idea that the country is essentially ungovernable.
Yeah.
No decisions are good. Pain is inevitable. Maybe what we want is for someone to come in and say, I can't change everything immediately, but I've got a plan. Here's how it's going to work. And I don't feel overburdened in doing it.
I wonder, how much are you setting the agenda versus responding to stuff happening? And stuff can happen at any point in 24 hours. So, how much will you find he's just sort of firefighting?
A lot. I mean, one of the things that's peculiar about PM is the difference between, I suppose, what people think it is and what it actually is. And a lot of the really big decisions that you make, people don't see. So you spend a lot of time on the phone to foreign leaders, and the number 10 press office will do a kind of 3-paragraph readout, which won't always be totally representative of how difficult that call was or how rewarding that call was. You'll do National Security Council at least once every 2 weeks. There's a load of architecture that isn't designed for the public domain, and so most people are sort of oblivious that it happens, rightly. Then there's also the extent to which you can be proactive and get out your message, and how that's balanced against having to be reactive and feeling at the mercy of events. I suppose the art, really, of the job, or part of the art of the job, is knowing how you can sometimes use those events to shape your agenda, or sometimes things present an opportunity.
Peter, before Keir Starmer came into Downing Street 2 years ago, he famously got his then Chief of Staff, Sue Gray, remember her, to come up with a list of issues that might trouble him in his first few weeks. And this list was called, excuse my language, the shit list. Sue Gray's reportedly been advising Burnham in the past few weeks. What do you think is going to be on this shit list? Let's talk domestic issues first.
So you've got social security reform, where some benefits, the number of claimants is going up at a rapid rate of knots. Defence is something that's even more salient. You have not just this defence investment plan, but the fact that the spending on it, certainly beyond the next couple of years, is slightly vague. Yeah. So Andy Burnham has promised to meet the commitments in the defence investment plan. He now needs to find the money to do it, and these are very, very big sums.
An extra 4.7 billion he's going to have to find. What else?
More widely, the cost of living and energy prices. These are things he said he's going to do something on very, very quickly, and people are waiting for that. And tying into that is this ongoing argument about North Sea oil. The Conservatives are convinced if we drill for North Sea oil, then we'll become energy independent overnight, and our energy prices will drop. Economists and energy experts have a slightly dim view of that. It's the sort of thing which would stop the Conservatives from saying, he hates the modern world, but at the same time won't actually probably make a huge amount of difference.
And all the signs are that Andy Burnham is going to concentrate primarily on domestic issues. Nonetheless, he's going to be our world leader, and he's going to have to get involved in all kinds of tricky geopolitical issues. And somebody's going to have to get on side is Donald Trump. His very first phone call on Monday with a foreign leader was with Donald Trump. And Burnham reportedly invited him to Manchester, despite Trump dismissing it as some town just a few weeks ago. And it seems that this meeting may coincide with the G20 meetings of world leaders, which the UK is hosting. How do you think Burnham is going to deal with foreign relations?
I mean, I think when he took office, Keir Starmer was hoping to focus on domestic issues mainly, but events got in the way, and Andy Burnham is arriving in probably an even more turbulent time. You've got the Iran war reigniting and the potentially massive implications for cost of living. Donald Trump is still there. One of the advantages that Burnham has got, he's keeping on Jonathan Powell, who's basically the font of all knowledge of foreign policy in the UK. He's a national security advisor, was under Starmer, and we understand is going to keep the same job. And he is going to do a lot of the foreign policy grunt work.
Coming up, Andy Burnham has invited Donald Trump to Manchester. But how should he manage the unpredictable president? So, Paul, what happens when Trump calls? Like, you were presumably there when Trump called Theresa May. Does he just ring the Prime Minister's mobile? How does it work, and how did those calls pan out when you were there?
The White House security kind of insists that those calls don't happen on open line. So there's a listening room downstairs, past the mismatched old wedding furniture. There's a listening room downstairs in number 10 where you're not allowed to take your phones in. So it's a secure environment, and you go in there to listen to the call. The PM will probably take it in his office because that's also secure. So there'll be a host of people on mute on both sides listening to these two guys.
I'm just imagining that your face is like...
Oh yeah, I mean, in my day, the Trump calls were very well attended compared to some others between other leaders.
Trump and May had a weird relationship, didn't they? I remember him trying to hold her hand, going up some steps one day. What advice would you have for Andy Burnham in how to deal with Trump?
I think there's a bit of, I don't know what you'd call it, but if you're going downstream in a sort of turbulent whitewater rafting situation, paddling every now and again will do more harm than good. And the calls sometimes felt a bit like that. Sometimes Trump would go off on some kind of tangent, usually to do with golf courses, but not exclusively. And every now and again, the worst thing to do would be to try and bring that hastily back to some sort of conclusion. The better thing was to let that play out and then say, I really wanted to talk to you about Syria. And he'll learn his own rhythm of that. So it's all to play for. But joking aside, that's a really important call. That's a really important relationship. And it's one of those quite sobering things that Andy Burnham will do, where his staff will have to go to a specially built room so that no one can tap into the call. And he'll be sitting there on the phone to the President of the United States, having been connected by a White House switchboard, who will say, please hold for the President. It's a pinch me moment, and he'll have quite a lot of those in the next few days, I'm sure.
And finally, hearing you talk, it strikes me that despite you being a former Conservative communications chief, you seem kind of won over by Andy Burnham, or certainly wishing him well.
I think lots of people will be in that position, even if they couldn't imagine themselves voting for him. For two reasons in my case, I guess. One, I used to work for Jeremy Hunt as well, so that was my path to number 10. I was a special advisor at the Department of Health, and Andy Burnham, as well as having been a former health secretary in government, was also Jeremy's shadow for a bit. They had quite a good personal relationship. I think when you read and see people say, Andy's a nice guy, one, I think he wants to come across that way, but two, in my experience, it is true.
Yeah.
He is a nice guy. But I suppose coming back to that idea that he's the seventh Prime Minister in just over a decade, we kind of need someone to take this by the scruff of the neck now and get it done, don't we? People want to be led. People want solutions, and we're at a difficult moment for the country, and we have been for a while. And it seems like he's kind of got his diagnosis right about that. He seems to understand that. And if he can marry that with some policy wins and some points of difference, who knows? But we do wish him well.
Brilliant. Let's leave it there. It's been so interesting to talk to you, so thank you so much.
Pleasure.
That was Paul Harrison. My thanks to him and to Peter Walker. You can follow all of our coverage of Burnham's premiership at theguardian.com. And that is all for today. This episode was produced by Ruth Abrahams, Guy Zafman and Belinda Gurung, and presented by me, Helen Pidd. Sound design was by Rudy Zagadlo, and the executive producer was Sammy Kent.
This is The Guardian.